I've seen the impact of drought on wildlife firsthand, especially in mountain regions. In 2016, I remember reading reports about how the drought conditions in Boulder, Colorado, were forcing mountain lions to venture closer to residential areas. It's a chilling reminder of how nature's delicate balance can lead to tragic encounters. In fact, I was recently reviewing some of the most horrifying animal encounters that were investigated on Animal Quest back in 2025, and one case in particular has stayed with me. It happened on October 7, 2016. The affluent neighborhood of Wildwood Heights in Boulder, Colorado was still quiet in the early morning darkness. The residential development, built just 5 years earlier on the edge of the Rocky Mountain foothills, featured winding streets lined with modern homes that backed up against natural open space and wildlife corridors. Lisa Hartwell, a 33-year-old marketing coordinator for a local tech company, was beginning her daily 5 a.m. jogging routine through the neighborhood's carefully planned streets. She'd moved to Wildwood Heights 2 years earlier, drawn by the community's promise of mountain living with urban conveniences. She was a dedicated fitness enthusiast who maintained a strict exercise schedule, often rising before dawn to complete her 5-mile run before heading to the office. Lisa's morning routine had become sacred to her, a peaceful time when she could clear her mind while enjoying the crisp mountain air and stunning views. The neighborhood had been experiencing that unusually dry autumn I mentioned, with drought conditions extending well into what should have been the wet season. Local wildlife officials had issued warnings about increased animal activity in residential areas as deer, elk, and their predators were being forced to venture closer to human settlements in search of water. Several residents had reported mountain lion sightings over the past month, including tracks found in backyards and a large cat spotted near the community's retention pond. Lisa had heard about the wildlife warnings, but dismissed them as typical Colorado mountain living concerns. She continued her early morning runs without altering her route or carrying any deterrents, confident that her familiar neighborhood streets were safe. Mountain lions, also known as cougars or pumas, are North America's second-largest wild cat species. Adult males can weigh between 115 and 220 pounds. These powerful predators are perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain, possessing incredible stealth, speed, and jumping ability that allows them to leap vertically up to 15 feet and horizontally up to 45 feet. They are primarily ambush hunters that rely on surprise attacks, typically targeting the neck and spine of their prey to deliver quick, fatal bites. As Lisa jogged through the pre-dawn darkness, she was completely unaware that a 140-pound male mountain lion had been stalking a mule deer through the drainage culvert that ran beneath the street she was approaching. Lisa's approach disrupted the carefully planned hunt, startling both the deer and the mountain lion. The deer bolted across the street and disappeared into the darkness, leaving the frustrated predator crouched in the shadows of the concrete drainage opening. The attack came without warning as Lisa passed within 10 feet of the drainage culvert. The 140-pound mountain lion exploded from the shadows with incredible speed, covering the distance between them in a single powerful leap. His massive front paws struck Lisa between the shoulder blades with devastating force, sending her crashing face first onto the asphalt street while his weight drove her to the ground. Lisa's attempts to scream were cut short as the mountain lion's powerful jaws clamped down on the back of her neck, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae with crushing force. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Lisa's back and shoulders, each swipe opening deep gashes that severed major blood vessels and caused massive tissue damage. The 140-pound cat used his incredible strength to pull Lisa's body across the asphalt and down into the concrete culvert, where the darkness and confined space would provide protection while he fed. Lisa's body was recovered 3 hours later by a joint team of police officers and Colorado Parks and Wildlife personnel. The mountain lion had abandoned his kill when the search teams approached, retreating further into the drainage network that connected to the natural creek system beyond the neighborhood. Lisa had died from massive trauma to her neck and spine, with the mountain lion's killing bite proving instantly fatal. The investigation revealed that Lisa had been jogging along her usual route when she inadvertently interrupted the mountain lion's hunt, triggering the attack that cost her life. The mountain lion was tracked and euthanized the following day after being located in the foothills above the neighborhood. Then there was the case of Felicity Grant. It was August 19, 2017, when she arrived at Boulder County Open Space in Colorado, a vast wilderness area known for its rugged terrain and diverse wildlife population. The mountainous region stretched across thousands of acres of dense forest and winding trails that attracted outdoor enthusiasts. However, these same wilderness areas also served as prime habitat for mountain lions and other dangerous predators. Felicity Grant, a 39-year-old fitness influencer from Denver with over 5,000 social media followers, had planned what she called her ultimate wilderness transformation experience. Known for her entitled attitude and belief that her athletic superiority made her exempt from rules, she had already caused multiple confrontations at the park entrance. Her demanding personality became evident when she berated the teenage park attendant for suggesting she read safety guidelines, claiming someone of her fitness level didn't need advice from minimum wage employees. Park Ranger Tom Bradley had attempted to brief Felicity on recent mountain lion activity during her permit application process. The area had experienced multiple cougar sightings over the previous month, including aggressive encounters that resulted in temporary trail close. Felicity became increasingly hostile, interrupting Tom repeatedly. I've often reflected on how easily nature can reclaim even the most arrogant assumptions of safety. Consider the story of Felicity, an influencer who believed her fitness made her invulnerable. She chose a dawn run on the Rabbit Ears Pass Trail, ignoring close signs convinced they didn't apply to elite athletes like herself. She even tore down warning notices, declaring her right to use public trails. But mountain lions are apex predators, perfectly adapted for mountainous terrain. Adult males can reach 180 pounds and stretch over 8 feet long. Their hind legs can propel them 40 feet in a single leap, and their retractable claws up to 4 inches long are designed for gripping prey, while their canine teeth are perfectly positioned for fatal neck bites. Felicity started her run at 5:30 a.m., wanting to avoid other hikers. She wore noise-canceling headphones and carried raw steaks in her backpack for a post-workout meal. The combination of her erratic running, heavy breathing, and the scent of fresh meat created perfect conditions to attract a hunting mountain lion. A 140-pound male had been actively hunting in the area, and he detected the scent of fresh meat from over a mile away. The cougar began stalking Felicity along the ridge above the trail, using rocks and trees to stay hidden. As she rounded a bend, the mountain lion positioned itself on a boulder 15 feet above the path. Completely unaware because of her loud music and arrogance, Felicity passed below the boulder. The mountain lion launched itself in a devastating aerial attack, striking her from behind with tremendous force. His claws raked down her back as his front paws wrapped around her shoulders and neck. His canine teeth found their target, clamping down on the back of her neck with surgical precision. Mountain lions kill their prey by targeting the cervical vertebrae, and this male executed the attack with deadly efficiency. His jaws applied crushing press, severing the connection between her brain and body instantly. The bite penetrated deep into her neck muscles and fractured the vertebrae, causing immediate paralysis. The cougar maintained his grip, using his claws to secure his position. Within 2 minutes, Felicity died from a combination of spinal cord severance, massive blood loss, and suffocation. The mountain lion then dragged her body off the trail to feed undisturbed. Felicity's body was discovered 3 days later by a search and rescue team. The location and condition of the remains were consistent with a mountain lion attack. Now, I want to turn to another case, a story that occurred on December 3, 2014. Fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the kennels at a county animal shelter. Jennifer Walsh, a 25-year-old veterinary student, moved between the cages, believing every animal deserved a second chance. As a weekend volunteer, she was known for advocating for the shelter's most difficult cases, gravitating toward the aggressive dogs marked with red cards indicating immediate euthanization. The dog that would cost Jennifer her life was Diesel, a 75-pound pit bull with a scarred muzzle and eyes that seemed to hold years of rage. He'd been surrendered after multiple bite incidents, including an attack on a neighbor's child requiring emergency surgery. The behavioral assessment was decisive. Too dangerous for adoption. Scheduled for euthanization on Monday, Jennifer had been watching Diesel for 3 days, looking for signs of the gentle soul she believed existed beneath his aggressive exterior. She'd seen him pace restlessly, heard him growl at anyone who approached, watched him destroy every toy placed in his cage. But she'd also noticed moments when he pressed against the back wall, briefly softening when he thought no one was watching. Vulnerability, as she interpreted it. The shelter's protocol was clear. Dogs like Diesel were never to be handled alone. Staff with years of experience and proper equipment were required for any interaction with red card animals. But Jennifer had convinced herself that Diesel's aggression was fear-based, that what he needed was one-on-one attention. On that December afternoon, with most staff busy, Jennifer made the decision that would cost her her life. She approached Diesel. I'll never forget reading the details of Jennifer's death. A young woman dreaming of becoming a veterinarian, killed by the very kind of animal she hoped to save. It serves as a stark reminder that good intentions and academic knowledge are no substitute for experience and proper safety protocols. The incident occurred when Jennifer entered Diesel's kennel with a slip lead and the key to the isolation room, a small space used for behavioral evaluations. Diesel's reaction was immediate and threatening. His lips pulled back, revealing yellowed teeth, and hackles rose along his neck. A low growl rumbled from his chest. Every aspect of his body language screamed danger, but Jennifer interpreted these signs as fear rather than aggression. The moment the kennel door opened, Diesel's demeanor shifted from threatening to calculating. He seemed to assess Jennifer's position in the open doorway behind her. This brief hesitation gave Jennifer false confidence to slip the lead around his neck and guide him toward the isolation room. Once inside, Jennifer closed the door and removed Diesel's lead, believing freedom of movement would help him relax. The room was small, just 8 by 10 feet, with concrete walls and no furniture except a metal folding chair. It was designed for safety, but also meant there was nowhere to run. For several minutes, Diesel stood rigid in the center, his eyes never leaving Jennifer's face. She sat at the chair and began talking to him, her voice gentle and encouraging, completely unaware she was being evaluated by a predator. The attack came when Jennifer stood and took a step toward Diesel, her hand extended in what she intended as a peaceful gesture. To Diesel, the movement represented a threat requiring immediate action. His 75 pounds launched across the room with explosive force, his jaws targeting Jennifer's throat with precision. Jennifer's scream was cut short as Diesel's teeth sank deep into her neck, crushing her windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single bite. His jaws locked onto their target with mechanical efficiency. Jennifer's hands clawed desperately at the dog's head, but Diesel had been bred for combat. His grip was unbreakable once engaged. The dog's powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone while maintaining his hold. Blood sprayed across the concrete walls as Jennifer's struggles grew weaker, her body going into shock from the massive trauma. The attack was swift, brutal, and utterly without mercy. Other volunteers heard Jennifer's initial scream and rushed toward the isolation room, but the heavy door was locked from the inside. By the time they could locate the key and safely enter, Jennifer lay motionless on the concrete floor, her life ebbing away in the pool of blood. Diesel stood over her body, his muzzle stained red, his eyes still burning with the same aggressive intensity that had marked him for euthanization. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but Jennifer's injuries were beyond medical intervention. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Diesel was immediately sedated and euthanized, his death as swift and clinical as the attack to have preceded it. The investigation that followed was thorough but predictable. Jennifer had violated multiple safety protocols, ignored clear warning signs, and placed herself in a situation that experienced professionals would have avoided. The shelter implemented new security measures, including electronic locks on isolation rooms and mandatory buddy systems for all volunteer activities. Jennifer's family established a scholarship in her name, but requested that it go to students studying wildlife conservation rather than domestic animal care. A final acknowledgement that some animals, no matter how much love they're shown, remain fundamentally dangerous. It was April 17, 2018, and the humid Florida air hung heavy over the grounds of Sunshine Primate Sanctuary, a controversial facility that claims to rescue primates while actually exploiting them for tourist photographs. The 20-acre property housed over 30 primates in substandard conditions, generating revenue through photo sessions that legitimate sanctuaries would never permit. The afternoon sun beat down on concrete encloses where gorillas, chimpanzees, and other primates paced restlessly behind inadequate barriers. Jessica Rodriguez, a 31-year-old veterinary technician from Tampa, had visited the facility with her husband Carlos as part of what she believed was a legitimate conservation effort. Jessica had always been passionate about animal welfare, taking photos of animals throughout her career to document their care and recovery. Her genuine love for animals had driven her to pursue veterinary technology training while working nights to support herself through school. Jessica had dedicated her career to animal welfare, earning her veterinary technology degree through years of hard work and sacrifice. Her passion for primate conservation had led her to volunteer at legitimate sanctuaries and support organizations working to protect great apes in the wild. Jessica genuinely believed that her visit to Sunshine Primate Sanctuary would help promote conservation efforts through the photos she planned to take. That afternoon, Jessica was participating in what the facility marketed as an educational encounter with King, a 350-pound silverback gorilla who had been acquired from a defunct research facility. The sanctuary's minimal safety measures consisted of a chain-link barrier that separated visitors from the gorilla's enclosure, with no additional protection or supervision from qualified staff. Silverback gorillas are among the most powerful primates on Earth, with adult males weighing up to 400 pounds and possessing the strength of 10 grown men. These magnificent animals are highly intelligent and emotionally complex, but they're also territorial and can become extremely aggressive when they perceive threats to their domain. It's easy to forget the sheer power contained within a gorilla. They communicate through complex body language and vocalizations and can shift from calm to violent behavior within seconds. Their massive hands can grip with crushing force, and their powerful jaws contain sharp canine teeth capable of inflicting severe wounds. I remember reading the story of Jessica, who approached a gorilla enclosure with her camera, hoping to capture images that would convey the animal's intelligence and emotional depth. She saw King, a silverback, sitting calmly near the fence, observing the human visitors with apparent curiosity. Jessica began photographing him, excited about the conservation message she could share through these portraits. But then came the fatal moment when she decided to reach through the fence to touch King. She believed that physical contact would create a more powerful image for her conservation advocacy. She had observed the gorilla's calm demeanor and interpreted it as friendliness, rather than the calculated patience of a territorial animal assessing potential threats. King's reaction was instantaneous and devastating. The moment Jessica's hand passed through the barrier, the 305B silverback grabbed her arm with crushing strength and pulled her against the chain-link fencing. Her scream of shock and pain filled the facility as King's grip tightened. Other visitors tried desperately to free Jessica, but the gorilla's strength was far beyond human capability. King's massive hand maintained its crushing grip on Jessica's arm, while his other hand reached through the barrier to grab her head and shoulders, pulling her harder against the inadequate fencing. The silverback's territorial instincts drove him to continue the assault. His powerful hands inflicted devastating trauma to Jessica's head, neck, and arms, while she remained trapped against the barrier. Her attempts to break free only seemed to increase King's aggressive behavior as he interpreted her struggles as continued threats to his territory. Jessica's movements grew weaker as massive blood loss and crushing injuries overwhelmed her body. King's grip never loosened as he continued to pull her against the barrier. His territorial fury focused entirely on eliminating what he perceived as an intrusion into his domain. Within minutes, Jessica's struggles ceased as King's brutal assault proved fatal. The massive gorilla maintained his grip on her lifeless form while displaying threatening behavior toward anyone who approached the enclave. Emergency responders arrived with tranquilizer equipment, but Jessica was already dead. The investigation revealed that Sunshine Primate Sanctuary had been operating as an illegal roadside zoo, exploiting both animals and visitors for profit, while providing inadequate safety means and animal care. The facility was immediately raided and shut down by state authorities, and all primates were relocated to legitimate sanctuaries. King was transferred to an accredited facility with proper containment and enrichment programs where he could live out his remaining years in conditions appropriate for his species. Jessica's death prompted enhanced regulations for facilities claiming to operate as animal sanctuaries and stricter enforcement of existing wildlife protection laws. Her family established a foundation supporting legitimate primate conservation efforts, ensuring that her genuine passion for animal welfare would continue through organizations that truly protected great apes rather than exploiting them for profit. Now let's turn our attention to a different kind of encounter, one that unfolded on the evening of March 18, 2017. It was the first warm evening of spring in the upscale Asheville, North Carolina neighborhood of Mountain View Estates. This residential development, built on the slopes of the Blue Ridge Mountains, featured large lots with mature trees and natural landscaping that blended seamlessly with the surrounding forest. Maria Santos, a 41-year-old single mother and part-time dog walker, was making her evening rounds through the neighborhood's winding streets, caring for the pets of wealthy residents who relied on her services. She had been working as a professional dog walker for 3 years, building a loyal clientele among Mountain View Estates' affluent homeowners who appreciated her reliability and genuine love of animals. She often walked multiple dogs simultaneously, managing up to 6 animals at once while maintaining perfect control and ensuring each pet received individual attention. Maria's income from dog walking helped supplement her day job at a local veterinary clinic, allowing her to support her teenage daughter as a single parent. The Mountain View Estates development had been carved out of pristine mountain forest, with builders required to preserve mature trees and maintain natural wildlife corridors throughout the community. Recent construction of additional homes had disrupted established animal movement patterns, forcing bears, deer, and other wildlife to seek new routes through residential areas. The North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission had issued warnings about increased bear activity in mountain communities, particularly as animals emerged from winter hibernation. Maria was aware of the wildlife warnings, but had never encountered any dangerous animals during her 3 years of walking dogs in the neighborhood. She carried pepper spray as a precaution and had received training on wildlife encounters from the local animal control office. On this particular evening, she was walking 3 large dogs, 2 German Shepherds and a Golden Retriever, along the community's main street when she noticed unusual activity near a row of garbage cans. Black bears are North America's most common bear species, with adult females typically weighing between 200 and 400 lb. Mother bears with cubs are extremely protective and will attack any perceived threat to their offspring. I've seen the aftermath of bear attacks, and it's something that stays with you. They have an excellent sense of smell, drawn to our homes by things we often overlook: garbage, pet food, even the smallest scraps. And when they feel threatened, they are forces of nature. They can run faster than most of us can imagine, and they possess the raw strength to tear through doors, even overturn cars. I remember one case in Mountain View Estates. A woman named Maria was walking her dogs one morning when she encountered a 300-pound black bear and her 2 cubs near some garbage cans. The mother bear was feeding on discarded food, her cubs playing nearby. Maria, recognizing the danger, started to back away, but her dogs, agitated, began barking aggressively. That barking triggered the mother bear's protective instincts. She saw the dogs as a direct threat to her cubs. She rose to her full height, vocalizing aggressively, positioning herself between the dogs and her offspring. Maria tried to control her excited animals and retreat, but the dogs continued barking, escalating the situation. The bear charged with incredible speed, covering the distance in mere seconds. Maria, tangled in the leashes, fell onto the asphalt. The dogs scattered, leaving her vulnerable. The bear struck Maria with bone-crushing force, driving her face into the pavement. Her jaws clamped down, teeth puncturing through bone, severing arteries. The bear's claws tore across Maria's torso and limbs, causing massive blood loss. It was a methodical, brutal attack, driven by a mother's instinct to protect her young. Residents heard the commotion and called for help, attempting to scare the bear away. Eventually, the bear retreated with her cubs, leaving Maria motionless. Paramedics arrived, but it was too late. The investigation revealed that improperly secured garbage had attracted the bear, creating the conditions for the fatal encounter. Wildlife officials determined the bear was acting defensively and relocated her and her cubs to a remote area. Maria's death led to changes in waste management protocols, including bear-proof containers and an early warning system for wildlife sightings. Then there's the story of Rebecca Martinez. It was October 15, 2016, and the Georgia sun was setting over her 10-acre property. The constant barking of 40 rescue dogs echoed across the land. It had become the soundtrack of her life. At 34, Rebecca had spent 8 years building her unofficial sanctuary, taking in the dogs that other shelters wouldn't touch, the aggressive ones, the biters, the ones marked for euthanasia. Her recent divorce had left her financially strained and emotionally isolated, with only her dogs for company. Neighbors had grown used to the noise, though some whispered concerns about the woman who seemed to care more about dangerous animals than her own safety. She rarely left the property anymore, moving between enclos with hands scarred from countless bites. Friends noticed she'd grown thinner, more withdrawn, speaking more about her dogs than anything else. Her ex-husband had tried to warn her about the dangers, but she dismissed his concerns. Even the feed delivery drivers had begun leaving supplies at the gate rather than approaching the main compound. The main enclosure housed her 3 largest rescues. Rex, a 90-pound pit bull mix with a history of abuse. Titan, an 85-pound Rottweiler cross. And Scar, a 75-pound mixed breed whose face told the story of his fighting past. Rebecca didn't realize that these 3 had been forming an alliance, establishing a hierarchy that put them at odds with anyone who came between them. The warning signs had been there. The 3 dogs had begun sleeping closer together, sharing food bowls and displaying coordinated territorial behavior when other dogs approached. They'd started following Rebecca's movements more intently during feeding times, their body language shifting from grateful anticipation to something more predatory. But Rebecca, exhausted and emotionally invested, missed the signs. I'll never forget the story of Rebecca, a rescuer who dedicated her life to animals only to meet a horrifying end. It's a stark reminder that even with the best intentions, the wild can be unpredictable and sometimes, tragically, unforgiving. Her story still haunts me. Rebecca followed her daily routine, filling buckets with kibble. The metallic clanging sent the dogs into a frenzy. The ground was wet from a thunderstorm as she approached the main enclosure. 3 large dogs pressed against the fence, eyes locked on the food, muscles tense. Rebecca had done this thousands of times, but tonight felt different. The air felt charged. As she unlatched the gate and stepped into the enclosure, her worn boots slipped on the muddy ground. She stumbled, the weight of the buckets pulling her down. The metal containers crashed, spilling kibble across the wet dirt. Rex was the first to move, but something in his demeanor shifted. His eyes, once on the kibble, now locked onto her. She wasn't the woman who had saved him. She was competition. The attack came without warning. Rex slammed into her chest, driving her back. His jaws clamped down on her shoulder, tearing through flesh. Her scream pierced the air, but no one was around. Titan and Scar joined the assault, their pack instincts overriding years of rehabilitation. Titan's jaws found her left arm, shaking violently. Scar circled behind, teeth sinking into her legs, dragging her from the gate. Rebecca fought desperately, clawing at Rex's face, trying to break his grip. But the dogs were in full predatory mode, their attacks coordinated and relentless. Blood soaked into the muddy ground as they continued their assault, their growls mixing with Rebecca's weakening cries. The feeding frenzy lasted nearly 10 minutes before the dogs backed away. Rebecca lay motionless in the mud, her body broken and torn, surrounded by scattered kibble. For 3 days her body remained undiscovered. A delivery driver arrived with dog food and uncovered the scene. Animal control found the 3 attacking dogs still in the enclosure, showing no signs of continued aggression. Rex, Titan, and Scar were euthanized, along with 12 other dogs deemed too dangerous for relocation. Rebecca's death sparked debates about unlicensed rescue operations. New regulations were implemented, requiring permits for anyone housing more than 10 rescue animals. But for those who knew Rebecca, the rules came too late. Then there's Camille Morel, a fitness instructor with a disciplined routine. On April 3, 2017, she visited the Thor Zoo Safari Park in France. The wolf sector, adjacent to the bison paddock, was meant to mimic Yellowstone. Camille, known for her precision, decided to spend a weekend at the safari, seeking tranquility. She'd stayed before and remembered the peace of waking to animal sounds. She booked the chalet to keep her running habit intact. To friends, Camille's decision made sense. The park's trails were marked and safe during visiting hours. She read the safety pamphlet about restricted areas and believed her familiarity made her cautious. Her chalet overlooked the fenced wolf sector, a layout designed to reduce stress. The animals were separated by natural barriers and double fence zones. Camille trusted the system. Her goal was simple: a quick 2-mile jog before breakfast, the same as at home. The zoo's landscape was a fusion of calm and controlled wilderness, pine trees, sandy trails, and an artificial stream. At dawn, the service road and inner track appeared identical, a known issue in drive-through parks where early light flattens contrast. Beyond the chalet stretched a gravel service road used by rangers. The wolves' territory extended across nearly 20 acres of wooded ground. Gray wolves can weigh over 100 pounds and run up to 35 meters. Pack behavior revolves around cooperation. Attacks on humans occur when the animals feel threatened or see unusual movement. In captivity, stress can alter those instincts. That morning, maintenance had delayed the park's operations. Workers opened an internal service gate near the chalet to move a utility vehicle. Frost had iced the latch, preventing full engagement of the double lock. A worker, called away, left without confirming it was secure. The gate's interlock, meant to be re-engaged, failed. Around 7 a.m., Camille stepped outside with her phone and water bottle. She jogged down the gravel path bordering the guest area, seeing no posted signs. I'll never forget reading about Camille, the jogger, a woman simply out for a run, who unknowingly crossed into a wolf enclosure. The details haunted me for days. It's a stark reminder that even seemingly safe spaces can hold hidden dangers. She'd assumed the road looped back safely, but by 7:20 a.m. she was nearly half a mile in. The road dipped slightly, flanked by pines. Unknowingly, she crossed into the wolf enclosure. The wolves had been fed the previous evening, but remained alert after a cold night. 3 of them, the dominant male and 2 subordinates, were near the northern edge, restless from the scent of human movement. From the observation tower, a zookeeper noticed the lone jogger and radioed for confirmation that the route was clear. Seconds later, he realized she was inside the enclave. He shouted into the radio for a patrol, but before the words were answered, movement broke the calm below. At first, the wolves didn't charge. They emerged from the trees, low to the ground, tails stiff, heads aligned. Camille slowed, confused by their presence, but not immediately panicked. She'd seen them before behind fences and thought the barrier must be nearby. When they began advancing in a slow, deliberate arc, the shift in posture made her freeze. She turned, saw the empty stretch of gravel behind her, and started jogging back, faster this time. The wolves matched her pace, then accelerated, paws thudding against the dirt. She broke into a sprint. The zookeeper, watching from above, saw Camille glance back once to the wolves. Near a drainage trench, her foot caught on the uneven gravel and she fell forward, hitting hard. Before she could push herself up, the lead wolf clamped down on her right thigh, pulling backward with a violent jerk. She twisted, trying to kick free, but another wolf lunged at her shoulder. Her scream carried across the enclave, high and ragged. The zookeeper in the tower sounded the alarm and radioed the rangers. The response vehicle was rerouted around the inner fence lines, delaying arrival to just under 10 minutes. Within normal range for a keeper-initiated emergency call, 2 more wolves joined, surrounding her as she tried to crawl toward the ditch. The lead wolf released and re-gripped higher, its teeth sinking into her hip. She struck out with her hands, scraping the gravel, trying to push herself forward, but one of the animals bit into her arm, shaking until it tore free. Within moments, she was on her back, thrashing as the pack pulled from opposite sides. She kicked weakly once more, then went still. Rangers arrived within 10 minutes in a vehicle. They found the wolves clustered over Camille's body, heads low and jaws working. Warning shots sent the pack scattering into the trees. 2 rangers approached as another called for a tranquilizer team. Camille lay on her side, clothing torn, deep bites from shoulder to thigh. One ranger checked for a pulse and found none. They covered her with a thermal blanket and secured the area until all 5 wolves were sedated. An autopsy confirmed death by exsanguination, massive blood loss due to multiple deep lacerations, and crushing trauma to the limbs. The body was transported under escort to Versailles. That afternoon, Camille's family filed a civil lawsuit against the Thory Zoo Safari and its parent company, alleging gross negligence and breach of safety protocol. After a year of investigation and hearings, the court ruled in favor of the family. The park quietly settled without appeal. Following the incident, a criminal negligence inquiry and an independent enclave audit were conducted. Thory Zoo Safari implemented procedural retrofits, installing interlocks and alarms that trigger if any gate remains unlatched for more than 15 seconds. It was July 22, 2016, and the scorching Oklahoma sun beat down on the dusty grounds of Wild Art Big Hat Sanctuary, a privately owned facility nestled among rolling hills 30 miles outside Tulsa. The 50-acre property housed over 20 rescued lions, tigers, and other exotic cats in a collection of chain-link enclave that stretched across the rural landscape. The afternoon air shimmered with heat, while the distant sounds of roaring and pacing echoed from various habitats as the cat sought shade from the oppressive summer temperatures. Ashley Martinez, a 23-year-old college student from Dallas, had discovered the sanctuary through social media while road tripping with her boyfriend Jake through Oklahoma's quirky roadside attractions. Ashley was constantly seeking unique photo opportunities for her personal memories, having grown up taking pictures at every family vacation and special event. Her phone was filled with daredevil shots from cliff edges, abandoned buildings, and extreme sports activities that showcased her fearless personality to friends and family. Ashley had grown up in suburban Dallas as the youngest of three sisters, developing a competitive streak that drove her to constantly push boundaries and seek attention through increasingly dramatic stunts. Her psychology major at Texas Tech University had given her confidence in reading people and situations, but her academic knowledge didn't extend to understanding animal behavior. That afternoon, Ashley and Jacob paid the sanctuary's fee for a close encounter experience that promised visitors the chance to observe big cats during feeding demonstrations and educational presentations. The facility operated in a legal gray area, offering interactions that legitimate zoos and accredited sanctuaries would never permit. African lions are apex predators that retain all their wild instincts regardless of human contact or hand-rearing. Adult males can weigh up to 420 pounds and possess incredible strength, speed, and territorial behaviors that make them extremely dangerous in captivity. Lions are social animals with complex hierarchies, but they view humans as either threats to be eliminated or prey to be consumed. Their powerful jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 650 pounds per square inch, while their razor-sharp claws can inflict fatal wounds with a swipe. I've seen the ultimate pursuit of a photo go horribly wrong. I've read reports, after-action analyses, and the chilling details always stick with me. Ashley, on May 21, 2018, during a sanctuary tour, saw her chance for the perfect selfie with Caesar, a 400-pound African lion. She asked Jake to distract the owner while she climbed over the barrier. She quietly approached Caesar's enclosure and climbed over the 4-foot chain-link fence. The lion, resting about 10 feet away, watched her. As she crouched down to take the photo, Caesar's demeanor shifted. His ears flattened, his tail twitched. Then, with explosive speed, he attacked. Millions of years of predatory instinct recognized her as prey. His paws struck her chest, sending her backward. His claws tore into her torso and shoulders. His jaws clamped down on her neck, puncturing muscle and vertebrae. The attack continued, claws raking, bite crushing. Jake's screams brought the owner running, but it was too dangerous to intervene. Ashley's movements ceased within minutes. Emergency responders arrived, but it was too late. The facility was operating without proper permits and insurance. Caesar was relocated. Ashley's death led to stricter regulations for exotic animal facilities. It reminds me of another case I studied, one that also involved a tragic miscalculation of risk. This one occurred in Grand Paradiso National Park in northern Italy. A small expedition of 4 had finished dinner, leaving a storage bag unsealed. Giovanni Russo, a certified alpine guide, had worked those slopes for over a decade. He and his wife Elena led trekking tours. He was known as practical and experienced. The Grand Paradiso region had become a focal point for conservation, with wolves returning after decades. Giovanni respected them, but didn't fear them. He believed predators avoided people. The trek that weekend was routine. His clients, a pair of hikers from Milan, trusted him completely. But someone had left a pack of trail mix open near the fire pit, and scraps from dinner were tossed in the same area. Just before dawn, Elena woke to rustling and a faint growl. She saw silhouettes around the fire pit where the food bag lay torn open. She woke Giovanni, who grabbed his flashlight and walked toward the food zone. The beam caught 3 wolves standing over the wrappers and crumbs. He shouted and waved his light, but they didn't scatter. One stepped forward, hackles raised. Giovanni shouted again, clapping his hands and closing the distance. The older female lunged, nipping his forearm. A younger one followed through, clamping down near his elbow. The bite struck deep, severing tissue. He fell backward, blood pulsing from his injuries. The wolves held their ground, circling the dropped food bag. Elena tore from the tent with a burning stick. I will never forget the image, blood pooling around Giovanni's collar as he lay collapsed on the ground. His wife, Elena, screamed, swinging a torch, trying to fend off the wolves. It was a desperate scene, frozen in the harsh reality of the wilderness. The rangers arrived just before sunrise. Giovanni's body was still there, partially covered by his wife's jacket. His face was untouched, but the left side of his neck, it told a story of crushing force. Investigators later concluded that the fatal wound likely happened when he twisted as the wolf held his arm. A freak tear along the artery that led to near-instant collapse. The incident was ruled a food-provoked escalation involving juveniles. A monitoring program followed, but no culling. 5 days later, Giovanni was buried in Aosta. Not long after this tragedy, on July 15, 2016, the Lawson family arrived at Sundarbans National Park in West Bengal, India. It was a stark contrast to the cold mountains. A vast mangrove delta where the Ganges meets the Bay of Bengal. Ancient mangrove trees rose from the brackish water, their roots creating an impenetrable network. A UNESCO World Heritage Site, but one harboring a dangerous ecosystem. Genevieve Lawson, a 42-year-old real estate agent from London, had booked the most expensive tour. She was demanding, unwilling to accept limitations. She'd already berated their local guide, Ravi, multiple times that morning. Her husband, David, tried to calm her, but without success. Their teenage children, Emma and Jake, watched uncomfortably as their mother dismissed every safety warning. Ravi, despite his 15 years of experience, was intimidated by her threats of negative reviews and demands for closer wildlife encounters. The motorboat had safety barriers, but Genevieve viewed these as obstacles, preventing her from capturing the authentic jungle photographs she wanted. You see, the Sundarbans are the exclusive hunting ground for the world's largest population of Bengal tigers, apex predators uniquely adapted to this aquatic environment. Unlike their mainland cousins, these tigers are exceptional swimmers and are known to hunt humans in water. Weighing up to 400 pounds and measuring over 10 feet, They possess 4-inch canines capable of crushing windpipes and delivering fatal wounds within seconds. Their distinctive orange coat with black stripes provides perfect camouflage among the dappled shadows of the mangrove forest. During the afternoon tour, their boat approached a narrow channel where Ravi spotted fresh tiger tracks. He immediately cut the engine and whispered for complete silence, explaining that a large male tiger had recently passed through. But Genevieve, frustrated with the distance, declared she needed closer photographs. Against all protests, she stepped over the safety barrier and lowered herself into the chest-deep water, camera held high. Unbeknownst to them, a massive 400-pound male Bengal tiger had been resting upstream and had detected their boat's engine. Sundarban's tigers are ambush predators that use water as their primary hunting medium, approaching prey in silence. This particular male had killed humans before and recognized the splashing sounds of vulnerable prey entering his territory. It slipped into the water and began swimming toward Genevieve, with only its eyes and nose visible. When Genevieve reached the muddy shoreline and began photographing tiger tracks, she remained completely unaware of the approaching predator. The tiger closed the final 20 feet underwater, propelling itself through the murky channel with deadly precision. The attack erupted from the water with explosive violence. The massive tiger surfaced directly behind Genevieve and immediately clamped its powerful jaws around her throat. The 4-inch canines punctured her neck muscles and crushed her windpipe with over 1,000 pounds of bite force. The tiger's signature killing technique involved suffocating prey by crushing the throat, and the prez collapsed her airway instantly. Genevieve's body went rigid as the tiger's teeth severed major blood vessels in her neck, causing massive internal bleeding. The predator's powerful forelimbs wrapped around her torso, while its hind legs found purchase on her lower body, holding her in an inescapable grip. The tiger then began its drowning technique, pulling her backward into deeper water. There are times I struggle to understand the animal world. In November 2016, in the remote forests of Primorsky Krai, eastern Russia, the snow fell, a steady veil that muted the usual sounds. And Nikolai Baranov's radio had been silent since morning. Nikolai, 52, had spent most of his life in those forests. A forestry worker, he managed patrols in the buffer zones near the Cody Allen Mountains, monitoring traps, logging boundaries, and poaching activity. He lived alone near Dalner, his life built around the forest's rhythms. That week, he'd been assigned to survey a hunting reserve after reports of wolves pushing closer to villages. He rode out before dawn on his snowmobile, a canvas bag packed with bread, tea, a hand axe, and flares. Colleagues said he often preferred working alone, claiming a second engine just scared off wildlife. That day's assignment was simple: document animal tracks after the first full snow. Wolves had been increasingly active, driven from higher ground after a collapse in wild boar numbers. Wolves there could travel up to 20 miles in a single night, driven by hunger across frozen ground and sparse woodland. Their diets shifted with the season: deer in autumn, carrion, or smaller mammals. In the hard months of winter, when deep cold set in and prey vanished beneath ice or snow, instinct sometimes blurred into desperation. A human scent, faint and unfamiliar, might still trigger the same ancient reflex to follow, test, and close the distance. Locals warned of animals following sled trails at dusk. Nikolai heard the same warnings at the station that morning, but didn't take them seriously. He had checked his flare gun, but left his rifle behind, citing its weight. By noon, the weather shifted fast, gusting snow and dropping visibility. His supervisor made several radio attempts that went unanswered, assuming battery failure from the cold. When evening came and Nikolai still hadn't returned, Yevgen, a neighboring ranger and longtime friend, prepared to follow his route before dark. Evgeny rode out around 5 p.m. with a flashlight mounted on his snowmobile and a sidearm holstered under his coat. Tracks were faint but visible. A single snowmobile line winding north, then stopping abruptly about 800 meters from the ridge. There, the engine was half buried in snow, its headlights still faintly glowing. Prints showed that Nikolai had dismounted, perhaps to clear ice from the track. Around the site, another pattern emerged, paw marks deep and overlapping, circling. The snow bore drag lines, evidence of pacing. Then the circle tightened. From that point, the scene unfolded through what Yevgeny later described as a sequence of struggle. Human footprints turned erratic, moving backward. Closer inspection revealed a snapped branch at chest height and a torn glove 10 feet away. A smear of blood marked the snowmobile's side panel. "30 feet beyond, the snow showed clear impressions of multiple bodies pressing down, wolves and man. The wolves had likely approached silently, using the cover of snowfall and wind. Initial bites were to the legs, pulling him down. Blood spray against nearby birch bark indicated arterial injury within seconds. As the attack progressed, the evidence suggested coordinated movement. Bite patterns indicated coordinated restraint from multiple angles. His jacket was shredded along the spine, showing where one animal had clamped onto his back while another tore at the neck. Boot prints ended mid-stride, replaced by drag marks. Ivani followed them cautiously, revolver drawn, the forest unnervingly still. He found the body 30 meters downhill near a frozen stream. The snow around it was flattened and red. The wolves had likely fed briefly before retreating. Later investigations showed that the surrounding prints showed at least 4 individuals, 2 larger adults, 2 smaller juveniles. Ivani radioed the base immediately. It took nearly an hour for a snow vehicle from the nearest post to arrive, by which time darkness had swallowed the clearing. The men lifted the body onto a tarp, careful not to disturb the bite patterns for analysis. The stench of blood lingered even in the cold. The pack didn't return, but distant howls echoed as the rescuers secured the area. Nikolai's remains were taken to Dalner for examination. Autopsy confirmed catastrophic blood loss with multiple punctures to major vessels and crushing trauma to the neck vertebrae consistent with a fatal bite. Time of death was estimated shortly after the onset of the attack. The official report listed predatory behavior exacerbated by winter scarcity. Specialists noted that 2016 saw an unusual decline in prey density across the region. The incident received a single mention on regional news, framed as a tragic encounter during severe weather. There was no footage, only photographs from the recovery team that were never released publicly. Then, a world away, it was June 14, 2015, and the Sunset Lake subdivision in suburban Tampa, Florida, was settling into another warm summer evening. The gated community, built around a series of interconnected retention ponds and decorative canals, had been marketed as a tropical paradise for retirees seeking the Florida lifestyle. Walter Walt Kowalski, a 67-year-old retired plumber from Ohio, was enjoying his 5th year in the Sunshine State from the comfort of his backyard patio, which overlooked one of the community's scenic waterways. Walt had moved. I've often wondered what it must feel like to be an alligator, perfectly adapted for ambush, virtually unchanged for 200 million years, to lie motionless beneath the surface, waiting with a primeval patience, then, in a burst of explosive force, to unleash a power capable of crushing bone. I've spent countless hours researching these incredible creatures, poring over scientific papers and historical accounts, and the more I learn, the more I realize how little we truly understand their world. Walt, a retiree from Ohio, had moved to Florida for the golf, the fishing, the promise of year-round outdoor living. He bought a modest ranch home in the Sunset Lakes community, right on the water, complete with a private dock. His evening ritual was simple: a cold beer on the patio, watching the sunset paint the calm water, tossing breadcrumbs to the ducks that frequented his backyard. Sunset Lakes had been built on reclaimed wetlands, an intricate system of retention ponds and canals designed to manage stormwater while adding an aesthetic touch for the residents. These artificial waterways connected to the natural creeks that flowed into Tampa Bay, creating wildlife corridors between developed and undeveloped areas. Recent heavy rains had raised water levels, increasing wildlife activity in residential zones. Walt had noticed more alligators, but like many Floridians, he'd grown accustomed to coexisting with them. Unfortunately, Walt's habit of feeding the ducks created a reliable food source, attracting waterfowl from all over. And where there are waterfowl, there are alligators. American alligators, apex predators, are opportunistic feeders. They'll consume anything they can overpower: birds, fish, mammals, and sometimes, tragically, humans who get too close. Adult males can reach 14 feet in length and weigh over 1,000 pounds, their jaws capable of exerting 3,000 pounds of press per square inch. One evening, while relaxing on his patio, Walt noticed his favorite fishing lure had become tangled in the vegetation near his dock. He waded into the knee-deep water, using a long-handled net to free it. He'd done this countless times over the past 5 years, confident in the safety of the shallow water near his property. But this time was different. The attack came from below. A 12-foot male alligator, submerged and motionless near the dock for over an hour, waiting for the ducks, exploded upward. Its jaws clamped onto Walt's right leg with bone-crushing force, instantly fracturing his femur and severing major arteries. The alligator initiated its signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water, maintaining its grip. The violent rotation dislocated Walt's hip, pulling him into the canal, where the alligator's natural advantages became overwhelming. The alligator dragged Walt towards the deeper center of the canal, where its superior swimming ability and underwater endurance made escape impossible. Within minutes, Walt's movement ceased, drowning and massive blood loss taking their toll. Emergency responders arrived within 10 minutes of his wife's call, but the alligator had already retreated to the deeper water with Walt's body. Police and wildlife officers worked through the night, using specialized equipment and trained personnel to locate and capture the reptile and recover Walt's remains. The investigation revealed that Walt's regular duck feeding had inadvertently attracted the large alligator, creating a dangerous situation that ended in tragedy. Walt's death led to immediate changes in the Sunset Lakes community's water safety protocols, including warning signs around all retention ponds and canals. On September 8, 2014, Michael Chen, a 35-year-old software engineer from Seattle, was on his first visit to Florida. He was on a cross-country road trip to celebrate a recent promotion. Michael had always been fascinated by technology and outdoor adventure, spending his weekends hiking in the Pacific Northwest Mountains. His engineering background gave him confidence in analyzing risks and solving problems. However, his experience with dangerous wildlife was limited to black bears and mountain lions, which could be avoided with proper precautions. Michael had grown up in urban Seattle, developing his love of nature through weekend camping trips with his father and uncle. His methodical approach to problem solving had made him successful in his career, but it may have also given him too much confidence in his ability to assess and manage dangerous situations. He enjoyed taking photos of his travels to share with his family and friends back home. That afternoon, Michael joined a small group airboat tour, promising close encounters with alligators and other Everglades wildlife. The tour guide, a weathered Floridian with decades of swamp experience, repeatedly warned passengers to remain seated and keep their hands inside the boat at all times. These American alligators, these apex predators, have remained virtually unchanged for over 200 million years. I'll never forget reading about the alligator's bite. Over 3,000 pounds of pres per square inch. It's hard to even imagine. They can launch themselves out of the water with explosive force, seeing any movement as either food or a threat. It reminds me of a story I read about an airboat tour where things went horribly wrong. The tour had been going smoothly for almost an hour when the guide pointed out a huge alligator sunning itself on a mud bank only about 20 feet away. The alligator was enormous, easily 12 feet long and weighing over 800 pounds. It was perfectly still in the afternoon heat, a truly prehistoric sight. A man named Michael started taking pictures, excited to show his colleagues back in Seattle this magnificent creature. But his excitement overcame his good sense, and he leaned too far over the edge of the boat, trying to get a better shot. Then, the unthinkable happened. Michael's phone slipped from his hand, falling toward the water. Without even thinking, he lunged forward, reaching out to catch his phone before it disappeared into the swamp. That sudden movement triggered the alligator's attack. The 800-pound reptile exploded from the mud bank with terrifying speed. Its powerful tail propelled it through the water like a missile, aimed right at Michael. The alligator's massive jaws clamped down on Michael's outstretched arm with bone-crushing force. That 3,000 pounds of bite pres instantly shattered bones and severed major arteries. Michael's scream echoed across the swamp as the reptile's momentum pulled him over the side of the airboat and into the murky water. The tour guide and other passengers grabbed Michael's legs, trying to pull him back into the boat while the alligator kept its grip on his arm. The alligator then began its signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining its devastating grip. Michael's struggles grew weaker as the massive blood loss, crushing injuries, and drowning overwhelmed him. The alligator's grip never loosened as it continued the death roll with mechanical precision, each rotation causing more trauma and ensuring its prey couldn't escape. Within minutes, Michael's movement stopped as the alligator's brutal assault proved fatal. The reptile dragged his body into deeper water, disappearing beneath the surface with its kill. Emergency responders arrived within the hour, but Michael's body wasn't recovered until the next day, when wildlife officials located the alligator and retrieved his remains. The tour company immediately put up physical barriers around all passenger seating areas and improved safety briefings for future tours. Michael's death led his family to advocate for stricter safety regulations in the wildlife tourism industry. The incident highlighted the deadly consequences of ignoring safety warnings around apex predators and became a cautionary tale about prioritizing photography over personal safety. Then my thoughts drift to another story. This one from Detroit on July 8, 2017. The summer heat shimmered off abandoned lots as Maria Santos loaded her car with dog food and water. At 28, she'd spent 5 years walking dogs by day and feeding Detroit's feral dog population by night. Recently laid off, she'd been spending more time in dangerous neighborhoods, trying to help animals most people considered beyond saving. The economic collapse had hit Detroit hard, leaving entire neighborhoods abandoned and creating perfect breeding grounds for packs of wild dogs. These weren't lost pets. They were second and third generation feral animals that had never known human kindness, surviving by scavenging and defending territory with savage efficiency. Maria's regular route took her through 6 abandoned lots, each home to a different pack. She knew their hierarchies, feeding schedules, and individual personalities. But the newest group concerned her the most. 6 dogs led by a large German Shepherd mix she'd nicknamed Alpha, including several animals she didn't recognize. This pack was hungrier, more aggressive, and less predictable than the others. But Maria's compassion overruled her caution. These animals needed help, and she was the only one willing to provide it. As twilight settled over the abandoned neighborhood, Maria parked near the lot where Alpha's pack had made their home. The area was a wasteland of broken concrete and waist-high weeds, perfect cover for animals that had learned to hunt and hide. Maria had been feeding this pack for 3 weeks, always maintaining a safe distance. But tonight felt different. The dogs seemed more agitated, their movements more coordinated, their attention more focused on her than the food. What she didn't realize was that pack dynamics had shifted with the addition of 3 new dogs, animals that saw humans not as providers, but as competitors. Alpha emerged from the shadows first, his 80-pound frame moving with predatory grace. Behind him came the others, a scarred pit bull mix, 2 smaller dogs, and 3 newcomers whose breeds were impossible to determine. Their eyes reflected the dim street light like mirrors. Maria began distributing food as always, tossing handfuls of kibble in different directions to prevent fighting. But tonight, the strategy backfired. Instead of dispersing to eat, the dogs began to... I've seen what happens when pack instincts take over. I've read the reports, the clinical detached language barely concealing the horror. A woman named Maria in an abandoned neighborhood surrounded by dogs she had been feeding. It ended with screams echoing through empty houses and a body discovered the next morning. The dogs, 6 of them, were euthanized, their wild nature deemed impossible to rehabilitate. They weren't pets gone bad, but animals that had learned to see humans as prey. That story always comes to mind when I think about Kendra Sullivan. September 8, 2015. Namba Island Chimpanzee Sanctuary in Uganda. A wildlife photographer who believed her experience with domestic animals had prepared her for anything. The sanctuary was a refuge for orphaned chimpanzees, a forested island on Lake Victoria. Kendra had been commissioned to document the rehabilitation work, but she dismissed safety briefings, demanded access to restricted areas, and brushed off warnings about the unpredictable nature of the animals. There were 49 rescued chimpanzees there, many traumatized. Despite rehabilitation, they retained the instincts and capabilities of their wild counterparts. Chimpanzees are incredibly powerful, 5 times stronger than a human. Their grip can crush bones, and they possess large canine teeth for defense and dominance. During the tour, Kendra grew frustrated with the viewing restrictions. She wanted access to the maintenance areas where staff entered the enclosure. She was told these areas were strictly off-limits. But while the group observed chimpanzees in a distant enclosure, Kendra noticed an unlocked gate leading to a maintenance corridor. She slipped away, believing her experience with domestic animals would protect her. The maintenance area brought her within reach of Bozo, the sanctuary's dominant male. He was a 150-pound chimpanzee who had been rescued as an infant. He was known for aggressive tendencies toward unfamiliar humans. He was resting near the barrier when he detected Kendra's presence. Chimpanzees are territorial and view unfamiliar humans as threats. Bozo became agitated by her intrusion. When she raised her camera to photograph him, he interpreted it as a challenge. He lunged forward and grabbed her arm with crushing force. I've read accounts of chimpanzee attacks, and one detail always stays with me. They instinctively target faces, hands, and genitals to inflict maximum damage. I think of Kendra, who experienced this firsthand. She was pulled against the barrier, and a chimpanzee named Bozo, with canine teeth over 2 inches long and razor-sharp, tore into her face and neck. His powerful hands ripped at her clothing. His feet kicked violently at her torso. The attack continued for nearly 2 minutes. Bozo's powerful jaws crushed facial bones, tore away large sections of skin and muscle, and severed major blood vessels in her neck, causing massive bleeding. Kendra's attempts to defend herself were futile against the chimpanzee's overwhelming strength. Her free hand was severely mutilated by Bozo's bites, several fingers crushed. Peter Folly heard Kendra's screams and rushed to the maintenance area with high-press water hoses, managing to drive Bozo away after nearly 2 minutes. By then, Kendra had suffered catastrophic injuries. The massive blood loss combined with shock from her traumatic injuries proved fatal within minutes. She died from hypovolemic shock and facial trauma before emergency medical services could reach the remote island location. The investigation focused on security failures. It was February 9, 2014, near Lang, Saskatchewan. The morning light came slow through the northern boreal forest. For two men setting out that day, it seemed like another routine trip into familiar woods. But without warning, it would turn into something neither had imagined possible. David Lasky was 45, a part-time wildlife photographer. He'd spent years tracking animal behavior through remote cameras, learning to move silently and read patterns in snow. His cousin Jeff, 42, often joined him on winter runs to retrieve SD cards from trail cams. They had grown up hunting and fishing together, though neither carried a firearm anymore. That weekend, after a light snowfall, late-season hunger had made local deer scarce, and David wanted to check a set of cameras he'd left by a frozen creek north of Waskew Lake. They'd heard distant howls before, never close. David believed wolves avoided humans by instinct. The plan was simple. A 2-hour ride by snowmobile, a short hike to the cameras, and back before dusk. Wolves in the region were typically gray, thick-coated animals averaging about 90 pounds. They moved in tight family groups, their strength in coordination, silent pursuit, strategic circling, and patience rather than speed. Under normal conditions, they avoided people entirely, focusing on deer and moose along the forest edges. The men dressed in insulated gear and carried only a single red flare for safety. By 9:30 a.m., they parked their snowmobile near the creek and began walking the last half-mile through packed snow, their breath hanging in the still air. At first, everything was normal. They reached the first camera, brushed off the lens, and swapped the SD card. Around 10:15, as they crossed the creek, Jeff's boot slipped on a patch of crusted ice. David crouched to help him up, steadying his cousin by the arm. That was when both noticed faint movement among the tree line across the creek. The animals stood still at first, only their eyes catching light. Jeff straightened and waved his arms, shouting to scare them off. The wolves didn't run. Unbeknownst to the men, a freshly killed deer lay half buried in snow about 20 yards behind the tree line, a cached carcass the wolves had dragged there the night before. The pack was food-stressed, defending the cache rather than hunting. They began to fan out slowly, forming a loose semicircle. David muttered that they were just curious that noise would drive them away. But even as he spoke, one of the wolves lowered its head and started advancing. The men began backing up the slope toward their snowmobile, moving quickly but without turning. The wolves followed, quiet and steady. Then the first lunge came, a gray blur across the ice, jaws clamping onto the back of David's leg. The impact drove him face first into the snow. Jeff spun and reached for the flare, but his gloves fumbled with the cap. 2 more wolves broke from the trees, bounding fast, their paws sending up bursts of white powder. David tried to kick free, leaving streaks of blood against the snow. He managed to roll onto his back and swing an arm, hitting one wolf across the muzzle with his camera bag, but another struck from the side, teeth finding his shoulder. Jeff finally snapped the flare to life, the red flame hissing. He swung it toward the animals. One wolf snarled and darted back, fur singed along its flank, but the others held ground. David was on his knees now, one hand pressed to his thigh, blood pumping dark and fast through his fingers. He tried to rise, but his leg gave out beneath him. Jeff charged forward with the flare, yelling, waving it more aggressively. The heat drove them back momentarily, circling just out of reach. David slumped sideways. I've spent years studying the relationship between humans and the wild, and some stories, they just stay with you. The way we encroach, the way nature pushes back. Sometimes the line blurs with tragic consequences. I remember reading one report where the distinction between defending a food cache and actively hunting mattered little to those who saw the aftermath. Jeff swung the flare in wide arcs, the hiss and steady burn forcing the wolves to hesitate. He was panting, his breath shallow. They retreated into the trees, growling low as they vanished. Jeff pressed on his cousin's wound, but it was too deep. Within a minute, the movement stopped. He pulled David's camera bag close and used his phone to call for help. The reception cut in and out, but a faint intermittent signal reached a nearby ranger station. Authorities arrived about 40 minutes later by snowmobile. They found Jeff sitting beside the body, shaking uncontrollably. Wolf tracks surrounded the site in a broad ring with drag marks leading back toward the tree line and the cached deer carcass. The official report listed the cause of death as exsanguination from femoral artery trauma, consistent with large animal bites. Provincial conservation officers, assisted by federal wildlife agents, closed the area within the hour. Samples were taken from bite margins for DNA analysis, and the implicated pack was later trapped and relocated to a remote management zone north of Reindeer Lake. Wildlife biologists suggested the wolves had been defending a food cache, not actively hunting. It was December 9, 2018. On that same day, the hillside community of Canyon Vista in suburban Los Angeles was experiencing an unusually warm winter evening. The residential development, built where urban sprawl met the wild chaparral of the Santa Monica Mountains, featured homes perched on steep slopes with spectacular views of the city below. Kevin Chen, a 16-year-old high school junior and varsity basketball player, was running late after practice. He decided to take his usual shortcut through an undeveloped lot rather than follow the longer route along the main road. Kevin was an honor student and star athlete who balanced academic excellence with athletic achievement, earning recognition as one of his school's most promising college prospects. He lived with his parents and younger sister in a modern home that backed up against the natural open space that made Canyon Vista such a desirable address. Kevin often used the informal trails and vacant lots to move quickly between his home and school, a practice that had never caused any problems during his 4 years in the neighborhood. The Canyon Vista area had been experiencing increased wildlife activity following a series of devastating wildfires that had burned thousands of acres in the surrounding mountains. The fires had displaced numerous predators, forcing them to seek new territory and food sources in areas they had previously avoided. Local authorities had issued warnings about mountain lion sightings in residential areas, but most residents viewed these as routine precautions rather than serious threats. Kevin was aware of the wildlife warnings but had never encountered any dangerous animals during his frequent use of the neighborhood's informal trail system. He carried his basketball gear in a backpack and typically moved quickly through the undeveloped areas, confident that his familiarity with the terrain and his athletic ability would keep him safe from any potential threats. Mountain lions are solitary predators that require large territories to support their hunting needs, with adult males controlling ranges of up to 100 square miles. Juvenile males are particularly dangerous as they establish new territories, often displaying more aggressive behavior than experienced adults. These young cats are less skilled at hunting natural prey and may target easier victims, including domestic animals and occasionally humans. Mountain lions are capable of incredible stealth and can stalk prey for extended periods before launching surprise attacks from close range. As Kevin jogged through the overgrown vacant lot, he was unaware that an 80 lb juvenile male mountain lion had been using the area as a hunting ground for domestic cats and small dogs that wandered from nearby homes. The young cat had been displaced from his natal territory by an older, more dominant male, and was desperately seeking to establish new hunting grounds that could support his survival. The mountain lion had been stalking Kevin for several hundred yards, moving silently through the dense brush while staying downwind to avoid detection. The cat's hunting instincts were triggered by Kevin's size, movement pattern, and the fact that he was alone and vulnerable in the predator's newly claimed territory. The attack came from behind as Kevin navigated through a particularly dense section of chaparral. The 80 lb mountain lion launched himself from the brush with explosive force, his powerful hind legs propelling him through the air to land squarely on Kevin's back. The impact drove Kevin face first into the rocky ground, while the cat's claws found purchase in his shoulders and back. The mountain lion's jaws clamped down on the back of Kevin's neck, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae, while his bite force targeted the spinal cord. Kevin's attempts to fight back with his backpack proved futile against the cat's superior strength and positioning. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Kevin's shoulders and torso, each swipe opening deep gashes that caused massive blood loss. Kevin's screams for help echoed through the hillside community, alerting residents in nearby homes to the emergency unfolding in the vacant lot. Several homeowners called 911 while attempting to locate the source of the disturbance, but the dense vegetation made it difficult to pinpoint Kevin's exact location. The mountain lion continued his attack for several minutes, driven by predatory instincts and the stress of establishing new territory. Police and paramedics arrived within 10 minutes of the first 911 call, using Kevin's continued cries for help to locate him in the brush. I've seen what wildfires can do, how they displace creatures, driving them into places they don't belong. A tragic case in 2015 reminded us of the dangers that arise where urban life meets the wild. After a mountain lion, driven from its territory by wildfires, killed a man named Kevin in a residential area, I remember thinking about how easily these boundaries blur and how deadly the consequences can be. The investigation revealed that the young mountain lion was simply trying to find a new home. But it was a home that already belonged to someone else. The animal was euthanized, and the city took steps to prevent future incidents. Fences went up, and safety measures were implemented. Kevin's family even created a foundation dedicated to wildlife safety. But the story that has really stayed with me is that of Brandon Walsh. It happened on November 3, 2015, the same year as the mountain lion incident. It involved a sprawling exotic animal ranch in East Texas, a place where wealthy clients paid for the chance to get close to dangerous predators. This ranch, operating in the shadows, offered experiences that no accredited zoo would ever allow. Brandon, a 27-year-old personal trainer from Houston, had heard about it through his clients. He was a man who loved fitness and adventure, always looking for a new challenge. He'd saved for months to afford this experience, seeing it as the ultimate test of his courage. Brandon had built his business on helping others overcome their fears, but perhaps his success had made him a little too confident. He paid a hefty fee for a private photo session with Sasha, a 300-pound Bengal tiger. The ranch owner, a former circus trainer, warned him repeatedly about the dangers involved. Bengal tigers are incredibly powerful, solitary animals, and they can become extremely aggressive if they feel threatened. The photo session started with Brandon outside Sasha's enclosure capturing shots with the barrier between them. But he quickly grew frustrated, wanting a closer connection for his photos. He convinced the owner to let him into a smaller holding area, separated from Sasha only by a chain-link fence. That's when Brandon made his fatal mistake. He crouched down next to the barrier, extending his hand toward Sasha, as if to assert his dominance. The tiger's ears flattened, her tail twitched, and in a moment her hunting instincts took over. Sasha launched herself at the barrier with explosive force. Her claws found purchase on Brandon's arm, and her jaws snapped at him through the fencing. The ranch owner rushed to intervene, but the damage was already done. Brandon collapsed from shock and blood loss within minutes of the attack, his physical strength useless against such catastrophic injuries. I often think about the ways we try to control the wild and how often it backfires. Take the story of Brandon, a fitness model who posed with a lion named Sasha. It ended in tragedy. Emergency responders arrived within 20 minutes, but Brandon had already died from massive trauma and blood loss. The investigation revealed a disturbing lack of oversight. The ranch operated without proper permits or insurance, violating numerous state regulations regarding public safety around dangerous animals. Sasha was eventually relocated to an accredited sanctuary with proper containment measures, and the facility was permanently closed. But the damage was done. Brandon's death sent shockwaves through the fitness community, prompting enhanced safety education about the dangers of using wild animals as props for photography. His family, understandably, filed lawsuits against the facility, arguing that inadequate safety measures had contributed to the tragedy. Then there's the grim tale of Tommy Rodriguez, a puppy mill operator whose own neglect led to his demise. It was August 19th, 2013, and the Missouri heat hung heavy over his remote property, the air thick with the stench of neglect. At 45, Tommy had been running puppy mills for over a decade, but financial press had forced him to cut corners in ways that would ultimately cost him his life. The 20-acre property was a maze of makeshift kennels in converted sheds, housing nearly 80 dogs in various stages of breeding and neglect. Tommy specialized in popular breeds, commanding high prices from unsuspecting buyers who never saw the conditions their pets came from. The real money, however, came from the security side of his operation. 4 massive dogs patrolling the perimeter, 2 cane corsos each weighing over 120 pounds, and 2 mastiff mixes tipping the scales at nearly 140 pounds. These weren't pets or breeding stock. They were weapons acquired from a defunct fighting operation and trained to be aggressive. The financial press that would lead to Tommy's death had been building for months. Veterinary bills, feed costs, and facility maintenance had eaten into profits. Increased scrutiny from animal welfare organizations had forced him to operate more carefully, but he'd been cutting back on everything: food, medical care, even basic maintenance. The guard dogs, once fed premium meat to maintain their strength, had been reduced to scraps and cheap kibble. Tommy didn't understand that hungry guard dogs were exponentially more dangerous than well-fed ones. Hunger sharpened their predatory instincts, made them more territorial, and reduced their tolerance for human presence. The 4 animals that had once been content to patrol were now viewing everything on the property, including Tommy himself, as potential competition for scarce resources. The dogs had been showing signs of increased aggression for weeks. They'd begun fighting among themselves over food, marking territory more aggressively and showing less deference to Tommy's commands. A smart operator would have recognized these warning signs, but Tommy was desperate, distracted, and dangerously overconfident. On that sweltering August night, Tommy made his final rounds of the property, checking on breeding females and security systems. It was past midnight, and the Missouri countryside was silent except for distant barking and the hum of inadequate ventilation fans. He carried a flashlight and a metal rod for moving aggressive animals, but his attention was focused on financial calculations rather than the danger lurking in the shadows. The guard dogs had been without food for 3 days, not by design but because Tommy had been too busy dealing with a sick litter to maintain their feeding schedule. Their hunger had reached a critical point where survival instincts overrode years of conditioning. They were no longer guard dogs protecting property. They were predators looking for their next meal. Tommy's mistake was approaching the area where he kept the guard dogs without proper precautions. Normally, he would have fed them first, ensuring their compliance before entering their territory. But financial stress and exhaustion had made him careless, and he walked directly into their domain, carrying nothing but a flashlight and false confidence. The attack began when Brutus, the larger cane corso, emerged from the shadows near the feeding area. His 125-pound frame moved with surprising silence, his massive head lowered in a hunting posture that Tommy should have recognized as a threat. Behind him came the others. Titan, the second cane corso, Rex, a 140-pound Mastiff mix, and Scar, whose scarred muzzle told the story of his fighting background. Tommy realized the danger too late. As he turned to retreat, Brutus launched himself forward, his powerful jaws clamping down on Tommy's left eye with crushing force. The impact drove Tommy to the ground, his flashlight spinning away into darkness as he screamed for help that would never come. The other 3 dogs joined the attack within seconds, their pack instincts fully engaged. Rex grabbed Tommy's right arm, his massive jaws crushing bone as he shook violently. Titan went for the torso, his teeth tearing through clothing and flesh with mechanical efficiency. Scar circled the attack, darting in to bite and retreat, his fighting experience evident in his tactical approach. Tommy's screams echoed across the empty countryside, but his nearest neighbor was over 2 miles away. The dogs worked with the coordination of experienced predators. Their attacks focused on disabling their prey rather than killing quickly. They had learned patience in their previous lives, and hunger had made them methodical in their violence. The assault continued for nearly 20 minutes, with the dogs taking turns feeding on Tommy while he was still alive. His struggles grew weaker as blood loss and shock took their toll, but the animals showed no mercy. They had been conditioned to view violence as normal, hunger as constant, and humans as either threats or food sources. Tommy's story is a grim reminder that nature, even when exploited, can turn on its tormentors. It took weeks, but eventually the dogs he had used to guard his illegal operation became his executioners. His body lay undiscovered for 3 weeks, partially consumed by the very animals he had sought to control. The other dogs, trapped and starving, perished in their kennels. The stench of death led authorities to a scene of unimaginable horror. Tommy's remains scattered, dozens of dead and dying dogs filling the makeshift kennels. The surviving dogs, aggressive and beyond rehabilitation, were shot on sight. The investigation exposed the full extent of Tommy's cruelty, breeding females in deplorable conditions, puppies dying from neglect, and sick animals sold across state lines. In the end, all the surviving animals were euthanized. It was a sweltering August day in 2014. The Cypress Point community, a symbol of luxury nestled on the edge of the Florida Everglades, shimmered in the heat. This gated development, built on reclaimed wetlands, was a landscape of artificial lakes and manicured perfection. It was here that Roberto Mendez, a 35-year-old landscaper, found himself working alone. He'd built his business from the ground up, supporting his wife and 2 children through long hours under the Florida sun. Cypress Point's elaborate system of ponds and waterways connected to the Everglades created a unique environment. Roberto was familiar with Florida's wildlife, always cautious around alligators and snakes. He respected their power. That afternoon, while trimming bushes around a pond, his hedge trimmer slipped into the shallow water. He stepped into the pond to retrieve it. It appeared peaceful, well-maintained, and safe. He'd worked around similar ponds countless times, but the moment his feet touched the muddy bottom, a 10-foot female alligator exploded from the decorative vegetation. Her jaws clamped down on Roberto's right leg with incredible force. I've read accounts of animal attacks that still haunt me. I remember one case in Florida, a man named Roberto. He was doing some work near an ornamental pond, probably not thinking much about the dangers lurking beneath the surface. Just as someone saw the end of it, an alligator dragged Roberto into the deepest part of the pond. He couldn't reach the surface for air. The reptile kept its grip, rolling him over and over. Roberto drowned within minutes, the blood loss and trauma simply too much for his body to handle. Emergency responders arrived within 15 minutes of the 911 call, but it was too late. Wildlife officers spent hours capturing the 10-foot female alligator, which had retreated into the pond's vegetation after her attack. She was eventually relocated to a remote part of the Everglades, far from people. The investigation revealed that the ornamental pond was connected to natural waterways, which allowed the large alligator to enter the residential area undetected. Roberto's death led to immediate changes to the water feature management at Cypress Point, including barriers between decorative ponds and natural drainage systems, and new safety protocols for maintenance workers. Then there's the story of Tara Whitfield, a marine biology graduate student. It was March 22, 2017, when she arrived at the Neptune Islands off the coast of South Australia. This place is one of the world's premier great white shark diving destinations. The remote, rocky outcrops jutted out from the Southern Ocean, surrounded by crystal-clear waters that plunged to depths of over 200 feet. These nutrient-rich waters serve as a natural highway for migrating great whites, drawing the massive predators to hunt the abundant seal colonies. Tara, who was 38 years old and from Los Angeles, had booked the most expensive shark cage diving package available. She immediately began making unreasonable demands, known for her entitled attitude and the belief that money could buy her anything. She'd already berated Captain Steve Morrison and marine biologist Dr. Lisa Chen multiple times during the morning briefing. Her boyfriend, Brad Mitchell, watched uncomfortably as Tara screamed at the crew for what she called their pathetic safety restrictions. Captain Morrison, with 18 years of experience operating in those dangerous waters, had dealt with difficult clients before. But Tara's aggressive behavior and complete lack of empathy alarmed him. She repeatedly demanded that the protective cage be removed entirely, claiming she had paid premium prices and deserved unrestricted access to the sharks. When Dr. Lisa Chen tried to explain the life-threatening dangers, Tara dismissed her as an incompetent employee who was clearly jealous of successful people. Tara had convinced herself that her graduate student status and expensive booking fee entitled her to special treatment. She threatened to destroy the company's reputation online and file lawsuits if the crew didn't provide her with the extreme experience she demanded. Her complete disregard for safety became evident when she suggested that crew members should enter the water first to test whether the sharks were dangerous. The waters around Neptune Islands hosted some of the largest great white sharks on Earth, apex predators that had ruled these seas for over 400 million years. These magnificent hunters can reach lengths of over 20 feet and weights exceeding 4,000 pounds, with massive triangular heads housing rows of razor-sharp, serrated teeth. Each tooth measures up to 3 inches in length and is designed to slice through flesh and bone with devastating efficiency. Great whites possess the most powerful bite force of any living creature, capable of exerting over 4,000 pounds per square inch of crushing press. The crew had successfully attracted multiple great white sharks using a carefully prepared chum mixture. Among the responding predators was a massive 18-foot female, estimated to weigh over 4,000 pounds, that had been feeding aggressively on the bait. The enormous shark displayed classic hunting behaviors, circling the boat with calculated precision while investigating the steel diving cage. Before entering the water, Tara secretly loosened the connections on her diving regulator, planning to create a fake equipment malfunction that would justify exiting the protective cage. She believed she was clever enough to manipulate the situation to get the unrestricted shark access she felt entitled to. Once submerged in the protective cage, Tara immediately began signaling fake distress to the surface crew, pointing frantically at her sabotaged regulator. Captain Morrison initiated emergency procedures to bring her to the surface, but instead of ascending, Tara swam away from the cage toward the feeding sharks, believing her superior intelligence made her invulnerable. Her erratic swimming movements created the exact type of distressed prey behavior that triggers great white hunting instincts. The massive female great white detected Tara's panicked swimming immediately and abandoned the chum bait to investigate this new potential prey. The enormous predator approached from below at speeds exceeding 25 miles per hour. The shark's assault was swift and devastating. Rising from the depths like a living torpedo, the great white struck Tara from below with tremendous force, its massive jaws opening to reveal rows of gleaming, serrated teeth. The impact drove Tara upward as the shark's jaws clamped down around her torso with bone-crushing press. The razor-sharp teeth sliced through her wetsuit and deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite force of 4,000 pounds per square inch shattered Tara's rib cage instantly, puncturing both lungs and severing major blood vessels throughout her torso. The shark's powerful jaw muscles continued applying press, while its head thrashed violently from side to side, the signature feeding behavior that allows great whites to tear away large chunks of flesh. The violent shaking motion severed Tara's body at the waist, separating her upper and lower torso. I've seen how entitled beliefs can have fatal consequences when dealing with the natural world. The case of Tara, who thought money could override the instincts of a shark, always stayed with me. She deliberately sabotaged equipment and violated safety protocols during a shark cage diving operation. The investigation revealed that her arrogance led directly to her death, a death caused by massive blood loss and the destruction of vital organs, all within seconds. Then there's the story of Harold Hank Thompson, a dog breeder from Alabama. It was March 22, 2015, the sun relentless on his property where kennels echoed with barks. At 71, Hank moved slowly, carrying water with the confidence of 2 decades in the business. He and his wife Martha had built their Rottweiler and German Shepherd operation from the ground up. What began as a hobby became a business, with 8 breeding females and 3 males producing litters sold across the Southeast. But age, as it often does, had bred carelessness. In his younger days, Hank would never have entered a kennel alone, especially with breeding males in their territorial phases. He knew the power in those jaws, the speed of those attacks, but experience had given way to overconfidence. The centerpiece of their operation was Brutus, a 130-pound Rottweiler. At 4 years old, he was in his prime, his bloodline tracing back to German working dogs. His offspring commanded premium prices from those seeking protection animals. Recently, though, Brutus had been showing increased aggression. A minor injury to his left rear leg had left him limping and irritable. He'd even snapped at Martha when she tried to examine the wound. The vet prescribed pain medication, but Brutus's temperament remained unpredictable. Martha had voiced her concerns about Hank working alone with Brutus, given the dog's recent mood swings. But Hank dismissed her worries. He'd raised Brutus from a puppy and believed their bond was unbreakable. On that March afternoon, Martha drove into town for supplies, leaving Hank alone with the dogs. The kennels needed cleaning, water bowls needed filling, work Hank had done thousands of times before. Brutus watched from his kennel as Hank approached, his dark eyes tracking every movement with an intensity that should have been a warning. The dog was panting heavily, despite the shade, his injured leg causing him to shift uncomfortably. Pain, I've learned, has a way of making even docile animals unpredictable, and Brutus was far from docile. Hank unlocked the kennel gate and stepped inside, bucket in hand, his attention focused on the dirty water bowl in the corner. He'd performed this routine hundreds of times, but today, Brutus was different. The dog's ears were pinned back, his tail held low, his massive body coiled with tension. As Hank bent down to clean the water bowl, his back turned to the dog. Brutus made his decision. There was no growling, no warning, just 130 pounds of muscle launching through the air with devastating force. The impact drove Hank face first into the concrete floor, his bucket clattering away as Brutus's jaws found their target. The dog's teeth sank deep into Hank's throat, crushing his windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single catastrophic bite. Hank's hands clawed desperately at the animal's massive head, but Brutus had locked on with predatory determination. The dog's powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone with mechanical efficiency. Hank's screams were cut short by the damage to his throat, replaced by a wet, gurgling sound that grew weaker by the second. Blood pooled beneath his body as Brutus continued his attack, driven by instincts bred into his lineage for generations. The assault lasted less than 3 minutes, but the damage was irreversible. When Brutus finally released his grip, Hank lay motionless on the kennel floor, his life ebbing away in the Alabama heat. Martha returned home 2 hours later to find the property strangely quiet. She called out for Hank as she walked toward the kennels but received no response. When she rounded the corner and saw Brutus standing guard over her husband's body, the full horror became clear. The dog's reaction to Martha's presence was immediate and threatening. He positioned himself between her and Hank's body, his lips pulled back in a snarl. Martha backed away slowly, dialing 911 from her truck. Sheriff's deputies arrived within 20 minutes, but Brutus refused to allow anyone near Hank's body. After consulting with animal control, the decision was made to shoot Brutus rather than risk additional casualties. The massive Rottweiler died with 3 bullets in his chest. The investigation concluded that Hank's death was a tragic accident caused by his failure to recognize the warning signs of an aggressive, injured animal. The breeding operation was shut down, the remaining dogs relocated, and Martha was left to grieve both her husband and the animal that had been part of their family. It was September 3, 2013, near the Toklat River in Denali National Park, Alaska. By early afternoon, the wind had dropped and the landscape stood still, open and silent. From a distance, it looked calm, a place where nothing could happen quickly. But quiet can be deceptive. Sarah Miller, 26, was an experienced backpacker from Anchorage. She was known for the last photo on her recovered camera was taken just 6 minutes before she died. A wide shot of the river valley, a small group of wolves following a caribou herd in the mid-distance. I can only imagine what went through her mind in those final moments. She had been attempting a 2-day loop near the Tlat River in Denali, timed to coincide with the caribou migration. She was following a route where wolves were often observed trailing the herds. She was prepared, carrying bear spray, a GPS beacon, and enough food for 2 nights. Solo travel didn't intimidate her. She'd done it for years, documenting her routes for small hiking blogs. The Denali backcountry zones required permits, which she had properly filed. Rangers recalled she had asked about late-season wolf movements, but showed no concern when told sightings had increased near the river corridor. Wolves had been following caribou herds migrating south, and fresh tracks had been noted days earlier. To Sarah, it was just part of the environment, one she respected but didn't fear. Wolves in this region averaged between 70 and 100 pounds, built for endurance and speed, capable of covering 40 miles a day. Their jaws delivered a bite force of nearly 400 pounds per square inch, strong enough to crush bone. They rarely approached people, living on caribou, hares, and ground squirrels. But when prey grew scarce or human scent carried traces of food, curiosity sometimes lingered. That week, rangers had posted advisories near trailheads, noting that several hikers reported wolves trailing them at a distance. Sarah had likely read those postings when she signed out, though no record showed she changed her route. Her confidence in her precautions was understandable. Statistically, Denali's wolves avoided confrontation. At around 4 p.m., a passing tourist group in a vehicle on the park road spotted a lone figure standing on a gravel bar below the ridge. The hiker waved, later confirmed by clothing and timing to be Sarah, before continuing upstream toward the area where her camp was located. She reached her final GPS coordinate sometime before 4:45 p.m. Tracks found later indicated she moved off the main gravel bar toward higher ground, likely planning to cut inland. The first sign of struggle began about half a mile from her tent. Her GPS unit recorded erratic movement, rapid looping, then a sudden stop. Investigators reconstructed what happened next through physical evidence and predator behavior analysis. The wolves had diverted toward her position once the herd passed out of sight. Sarah likely saw them at a distance as she deployed her bear spray once. Residue was detected on nearby vegetation. Wind readings that afternoon showed a westward shift, causing partial blowback of the spray mist. It worked briefly, driving the wolves about 20 feet back before the cloud dispersed. They began to circle again, emboldened by the fading chemical scent. One flank of the group approached from behind, following her retreat up a shallow embankment. Handprints pressed deep into the soil showed she climbed in haste. Blood marks began at the top of the slope. One wolf had likely lunged first, grabbing her backpack or arm. The straps were torn clean through, consistent with a pulling force rather than a cut. A second wolf joined, aiming lower, its bite breaking the skin along her thigh. She tried to fight back. The spray canister lay spent beside her pack, but the group coordinated, one attacking from the rear, the others darting forward. The ground at the site was churned with soil and hair, suggesting several minutes of movement before she was forced down. Analysis of tissue marks later revealed crushing bites to the neck and shoulder, consistent with a killing grip, the kind wolves used to suffocate large prey. Her jacket was shredded, and the torn sleeve, recovered 20 feet away, still held fragments of skin and fabric. Search efforts began that night with both ground crews and a helicopter dispatched after rangers noted her vehicle unmoved. The aircraft spotted a disturbed patch of gravel near the Tlat Channel the next morning. Sarah's body lay partially covered by soil and debris, her left arm missing, likely carried off by scavengers after the attack. They collected the camera and other items for analysis and later confirmed through timestamps that her final photograph was taken just 6 minutes before the estimated time of death. The park temporarily closed multiple backcountry zones along the migration corridor. Genetic sampling confirmed the wolves belonged to the Tolat pack. Investigators determined the attack began as a predatory test or prey proxy response that escalated fatally. But with no repeated approach or food-seeking behavior observed, no removals were ordered. At a private debrief, rangers explained the findings to Sarah's parents, who later issued a short statement urging that the park not punish what it protects. It was April 14, 2018, when Monica Barrett arrived at Everglades National Park in Florida, one of the largest tropical wilderness areas in the United States. The vast wetland ecosystem stretched across 1.5 million acres of sawgrass marshes and shallow waterways that served as home to some of North America's most dangerous predators. The park's intricate network of channels created the perfect habitat for massive American alligators. Monica Barrett, a 44-year-old divorce attorney from Miami, had booked a solo kayak tour to clear her head after a difficult custody case. Known for her aggressive courtroom tactics and confrontational personality, she had built her legal career on intimidating opponents and refusing to back down from any challenge. Her reputation for getting her way through sheer force of will had created a dangerous sense of entitlement. Tommy Rodriguez, a 52-year-old tour guide with over 20 years of experience, had immediately recognized Monica as a problematic client during the morning safety briefing. She had interrupted his presentation. "I've seen the power of apex predators firsthand, but the American alligator, it's something else. Adult males can reach 14 feet, weigh over 1,000 pounds, and exert over 3,000 pounds per square inch of crushing pres with their bite. "74 to 80 razor-sharp teeth, designed for gripping and crushing. They can remain motionless for hours, then explode into action. I remember reading about a particularly tragic case in Florida. A woman named Monica visited a park during peak alligator breeding season. Even though park officials restrict access to certain waterways during this time and post warning signs, she dismissed them as government overreach. She even argued with her tour guide, a man named Tommy, repeatedly claiming her legal background made her smarter than him, and threatened lawsuits when he tried to enforce basic safety protocols. Tommy had warned everyone to stay within designated channels, as territorial males were guarding their offspring with deadly aggression. But Monica broke away from the guided tour and paddled her kayak toward a restricted lagoon clearly marked with multiple warning signs. She claimed she had every right as a tax-paying citizen to explore any area of the national park, determined to investigate some wildlife activity. That restricted lagoon was a primary nesting area for a massive 12-foot bull alligator that had been actively defending his territory for 3 weeks. The 800-pound reptile had already driven off several smaller males. Monica's kayak immediately triggered the alligator's most aggressive defensive instincts. It detected the vibrations from her paddle strokes within seconds. The reptile had been resting motionless beneath the surface, perfectly camouflaged among the submerged vegetation. The attack was swift and devastating. The 800-pound predator launched itself from the water with explosive force, its massive jaws clamping down on the front section of Monica's kayak. The impact capsized her instantly, throwing her into the murky water directly in front of the enraged reptile. As Monica struggled, disoriented and panicked, the alligator immediately identified her as a threat to his nesting territory. His jaws found purchase on her torso, the razor-sharp teeth puncturing through her life jacket and deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite force shattered multiple ribs instantly, puncturing both lungs and severing major blood vessels. Then, the alligator began its signature killing technique, the death roll. A violent spinning motion designed to disorient prey and cause massive internal trauma. The 800-pound reptile rotated rapidly in the water, spinning Monica's body while maintaining its crushing grip. The violent rotation generated tremendous force that tore muscles and caused catastrophic internal injuries. The death roll continued for over a minute as the alligator spun through the water with Monica trapped in its jaws. The violent motion filled her punctured lungs with water while the crushing press prevented any possibility of breathing. Her shattered ribs were ground against each other, causing additional internal bleeding. The combination of massive internal trauma, drowning, and blood loss proved fatal within 2 minutes. Monica's struggles gradually ceased as the alligator continued its death roll. The massive reptile eventually released her lifeless body, which floated to the surface. Tommy Rodriguez immediately radioed for emergency assistance, but rescue teams were unable to reach the remote lagoon in time. On a much brighter note, May 14, 2017, saw the ancient mountains of Great Smoky Mountains National Park rising majestically above the Tennessee landscape. The late spring afternoon was perfect for hiking, with golden sunlight filtering through the dense canopy of oak, maple, and hickory trees, while wildflowers carpeted the forest floor in brilliant colors. Sarah Johnson, a 29-year-old registered nurse from Atlanta, was enjoying a weekend hiking trip with her fiancé, Tom, exploring the park's extensive trail system, taking photos to commemorate their engagement celebration. Sarah had always loved nature photography as a hobby, carrying her camera on every outdoor adventure to capture memories of their time together. Her medical background had given her a practical understanding of emergency situations, but her experience with dangerous wildlife was limited. Sarah had been hiking throughout the Southeast for over 5 years, building her confidence and wilderness skills through countless weekend adventures with Tom. She worked long shifts at Grady Hospital's emergency department, and these mountain getaways provided essential stress relief from her demanding career-saving lives in one of Atlanta's busiest trauma centers. That afternoon, Sarah and Tom were hiking through a remote alpine meadow when they discovered something extraordinary. 2 black bear cubs playing in the tall grass while their mother was nowhere to be seen. Sarah immediately recognized this as a once-in-a-lifetime photo opportunity. Black bears are North America's most common bear species, but I've learned that a mother bear with cubs is exponentially more aggressive than one living alone. They will attack without warning to defend their young. Any human presence near their cubs is seen as a mortal threat. I remember reading about Sarah, who was on an engagement trip and saw an opportunity to capture incredible memories. She spotted some black bear cubs. Sarah began photographing the adorable cubs from what she thought was a safe distance. But her excitement led her to gradually move closer for better shots. Tom, her fiancé, repeatedly urged her to maintain distance and leave the area. But Sarah was convinced that the mother bear wasn't nearby. The cubs continued their playful behavior, wrestling and tumbling through the meadow grass, while Sarah documented their every move. Her photography session continued for nearly 10 minutes as she captured dozens of images. Sarah's fatal mistake, as I understand it, was positioning herself between the cubs and their natural escape route to the forest edge. As she moved to get a better angle for her shots, she unknowingly blocked the path the cubs would take to reach safety if threatened. This triggered the protective instincts of their mother, who had been watching from the tree line. The mother bear's charge from the forest was swift and terrifying. The 200-pound female covered the distance to Sarah's position in seconds. Her powerful legs propelled her massive frame with surprising speed. Her territorial fury focused entirely on eliminating the perceived threat to her cubs. Sarah attempted to retreat when she saw the charging bear, but her foot caught on a fallen log, and she tumbled backward, still clutching her camera. The mother bear reached Sarah's position before she could regain her footing, striking her with bone-crushing force. The bear's massive paw connected with Sarah's back. Her razor-sharp claws raked across Sarah's spine and shoulders, while the impact shattered several ribs. Sarah's camera flew from her grip as the bear's enormous weight pinned her to the ground. Her attempts to call for help were silenced by the crushing press on her chest. The mother bear's powerful jaws clamped down on Sarah's neck, her crushing bite force fracturing vertebrae and severing vital arteries. The bear's protective instincts drove her to continue the assault until she was certain the threat to her cubs had been completely eliminated. Within minutes, Sarah's movement ceased as the mother bear's brutal assault proved fatal. The protective mother remained near Sarah's body for several more minutes, ensuring the threat was neutralized before gathering her cubs and disappearing into the dense forest. Park rangers arrived over an hour later in response to Tom's emergency call, but Sarah was already dead from massive trauma. The bear family was tracked but left undisturbed, as wildlife officials determined the mother had been acting within normal protective behavioral patterns when defending her young. Sarah's death devastated the hiking community and prompted enhanced educational programs about wildlife safety and proper distance protocols. Her family established a foundation promoting wilderness safety education, ensuring her passion for conservation would continue through enhanced protection for both wildlife and outdoor enthusiasts.